Channel Z and Knox Brew Hub present Knox Brew Radio and Podcast, an in-depth look at the craft beer scene in Knoxville and the latest craft beer news from around the country and all over the world. Brought to you by First Century Bank, family-owned local banking since 1894. And by longtime friends of the show, Grayson Subaru. Broadcasting live from the Hub in downtown Knoxville every Monday at 6 p.m. And now, kick back and crack one open with local beer's best friends, Zach Roskop and Stryker.
Hello, friends, and welcome to Knox Brew Radio. We're so glad to have you joining us. And a little tidbit here. I want to say this at the very beginning of the show, even before I introduce our hosts here. Today's episode has been pre-recorded. We want to be very open, very honest. It's Memorial Day. At least you should be listening to this on Memorial Day or the day after. And we wanted to enjoy that day with our friends and family. And so we have pre-recorded this. Thanks for hanging out. Hopefully, if you're listening to this live on the radio, don't drive down to the Hub and join us. We will not be there.
I'll drink to that.
I will definitely drink to that. We're still going to be drinking plenty.
And the plan is, as of now, is for the Hub to be closed. That might change, but we'll see. So thanks for hanging out and joining us. We got a great show planned, and we're super excited to be hanging out with you. Again, my name is Zach Roskop. As always, I'm joined with my wonderful co-hosts. We have Candace Ace Preston.
Hey.
And yeah, round of applause. Yeah. It's also 12:30 on a Monday as we're recording this for you all. So where we normally have a live audience right now, it's just Amy hanging out behind the bar. So,
but I've still got my Memorial Day best on over here.
Absolutely,
I'm ready to celebrate the holiday in style a week in advance.
I'll drink to that.
Which is so
I will
neat.
definitely drink to that.
I feel like you're always dressed for Memorial Day.
I try my best.
And that booming voice you're hearing right now is our other wonderful host and audio producer, Stryker.
That's me.
Mama
Cheers.
calls me Kevin, a.k.a. just Kevin. And then we want to do a quick shout-out as well to the person on camera. If you get a chance to watch this on YouTube, doing our wonderful video production, we have Cam Malador hanging out with us.
Cam!
And if you're listening to this, you'll got a chance to get to know a little bit more about Cam as we interviewed him last week live on the show. So, Cam, thanks for hanging out with us, for being here, man. We appreciate it. As always, we want to take a quick shout out and thank our wonderful sponsors for making this show possible. I know that it felt like half of Knoxville was at the Moon Taxi show on Thursday. And the reason I bring the Moon Taxi show up is that our wonderful sponsors help make that event possible as well.
That's right.
So not only does First Century Bank and Grayson Subaru love local beer, they love music, and they love this city just as much as we do. And I want to say a quick thank you to them for their support.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Yeah, during that show, Shanna, who's a wonderful member of the First Century team, ran up to me and gave me these little boom sticky things that said First Century on them. I played air drums with those things for like 20 minutes.
And then Amy promptly took them away from
Yeah, that's probably true. So thank you, First Century, for that. And as soon as I walked in, the first person I saw was Dan. And I ran up, I gave him a big hug, I picked him up off the ground and told him thank you for his support, for everything that the Grayson Subaru team does. And so we're just happy to be a part of the Subaru and the First Century Bank families, and I want to say a shout out to them. Thanks for making this all possible.
Absolutely.
All right, well, let's dive in, as I'm very excited. I say this every single week. We have a special Brew News announcement, something that Candace and I have been working very hard on.
Extremely.
So let's just go ahead and dive into this week's Brew News. All right, folks, you've all been asking, I don't know how many times Candace has gotten this question.
Many.
When is Knox Brew Tours going to relaunch? And we finally have the answer, if you haven't already heard.
Oh boy!
I see some excitement from just Kevin over here. Now, here's my go-to joke. If someone said, when is Knox Brew Tours going to restart, I would always answer, if I had $1 for every time someone asked me that question, I wouldn't have to restart Knox Brew Tours. And we don't.
So true, though.
It's so true.
So
And that means that people really loved what we did and the hard work that we've put in from the beginning. And Candace has done such a great job since she became a part of the team.
Thank you.
So there's a few layers here, but let's get down to brass tacks.
All right.
The first weekend in June, Knox Brew Tours will begin offering walking brew tours.
Awesome.
Yes. Now the weather is beautiful. Our breweries are ready. Our participants are ready.
I'm so ready.
Candace is so ready. We wanted to start off by offering walking tours only. Couple reasons for that.
Okay.
One, it's a good way to sort of dip our toes in the water and restart the machine that is Knox Brew Tours. Second reason is that it takes a little bit longer to get our buses ready.
The actual
Right.
machines, yes.
Yeah, the actual machines. Great point, Candace. So not only do our buses need to, go through the mechanics and get all the things proper, we're also going to be going through a rebranding as well, which takes some time. And then once that rebranding is completed, we're going to be getting our vehicles inspected. So in the meantime, we hope, my fingers are crossed for the third weekend in June, is when I hope that we'll be able to start offering mobile tours again. But starting next weekend, the first weekend in June, we'll now be offering walking tours again for Knox Brew Tours.
We back, baby.
We back. Previously, we only offered one walking tour. Well, we had two, but we have expanded. So I'm excited to announce starting the first week in June, on Thursday at 6, we'll be offering a South Knoxville walking tour to include Print Shop, Highwire, and Alliance Brewing Company. Fridays, we're going to be offering two walking tours, one downtown at 3:30 and one at North Knox at 6:30. The downtown tour, I believe, so far is going to be Balter, Pretentious, Black Horse. That might change a little bit as we might be able to poke our heads into North Knox a little bit. The North Knoxville tour is exciting because we have a lot of different breweries that we can choose from.
Oh, yeah.
So that one's going to change. And it'll change up a little bit. But we'll be working with Geezers, Zool, Crafty Bastard, Yeehaw When They Open, and Schultzbrow, and Gypsy Circus as well. So,
Wow.
and we're going to be hanging out with Daniel from Gypsy later on in the show too. So, Saturday we're going to be doing two walking tours, an 11:45 downtown and a 3 o'clock North Knoxville. And then this is something I'm super excited about. Little Sunday fun day. We're going to offer two walking tours on Sundays, one at 11:45 and one at 3 in South Knox and North Knoxville.
Love that.
Me
So-
too. Here, here. I
Go
will
ahead and
drink to that.
Yeah, cheers.
Exactly.
Finally.
And go ahead and expect to see me on one of those Sono tours because I need to get my steps in.
You need to get your steps in. Yeah, that's how we should advertise the. You got a Fitbit, you got an Apple Watch. Sign up for a Knox Brew Tours walking tour.
There you go.
Does it also have the breathalyzer too built
Yeah,
into
it
it?
should have a breathalyzer too. It's been a long year. It's been over a year. We ran our last tour the second weekend in March.
Yeah. Weekend of St. Patrick's Day. It was the
Yep.
last one.
I'm super excited. I know Candace is. We're happy to be back and to be doing what we love, and that's to sharing the story of Knoxville beer with people and talking about beer and drinking beer and just sharing it all.
Yeah.
I know you and I have found our own little ways to do that over the past year and a half. I'll be at a restaurant and somebody will be like, "What's this beer like?" And I'm like, "Let me tell you."
Kool-Aid man through the wall. Well.
And then when that's over, I'm like, "Man, that was good for me. Was that good for you?" I miss giving tours, and I'm happy to be back.
Same. Hard same. I am very, very excited.
So if you're interested
Just
in
a little
signing
jacked.
up for one of the first official tours, if they're not already sold out, check out knoxbrewtours.com. Happy to be back, and that's it for this week's Brew News.
Hell yeah.
I'll
I'll drink to that.
Cheers.
Cheers. All right, as always, we like to take a quick musical break as we love music. When we come back from this break, we're going to be joined by our wonderful guest for today's show, Peter Johnson from, oh my gosh, Best Brands. I almost said Littman. That was last week. Peter from Best Brands and Daniel Delph now at Gypsy Circus. Stryker, what are we listening to?
You know, this one goes out to our video producer, Cam.
Aw.
As we were talking about live music making a resurgence, I mentioned how excited I was about this lineup that was recently announced. And he had never heard of Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like,
Seriously?
brother, you got to hear this band out of Denver, Colorado. Their music never gets old, and this song is I Need Never Get Old.
Now we get to dive into my favorite part of every show. I say this often, and that's we get to hang out with our wonderful guests joining us at the table up here at the Hub. So let's dive straight into it. Immediately to my left, we have a very fine-looking gentleman, a very tall one as well. Flattery never hurts. We have Peter Johnson, who happens to also be our beer rep for Best Brands. Peter, thanks for joining us on the show.
Welcome, Peter.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Every time we've interacted at the Hub, I feel like I've learned more and more about you, and you seem like you've got a lot going on, so I look forward to learning more about you in just a few minutes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. And then next to him, we have Daniel Delf. Daniel is a great friend of ours as well. We've worked with him a lot at Last Days of Autumn through Knox Brew Tours, but he's gone through a recent transition and is now, he's taken his talents to South Beach, or I should say North Knox, and doing something sort of familiar but different as well, as you are now what's the official title? Barrel Master?
Barrel Master and Mead Maker.
Barrel Master and Mead Maker at Gypsy Circus. Daniel, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you. It's good to be back in this building, actually, to be honest. And be back downtown for the first time in over a year.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We've changed quite a bit down here, and it feels very homey, so thanks for joining us. Well, sweet. Let's just dive straight into it here. I mentioned, Peter, that you are our rep for Best Brands. Tell us a little bit about the company that you work for and what you do for them.
Sure. Best Brands, Inc. is based out of Nashville, Tennessee. We are actually the second largest distributor in the state, right behind Lippman Brothers. But here in Tennessee, we're sort of an outer market. In Nashville, they carry some like major liquor brands, major wine brands, and everything. We have some of those here in Knoxville, but it's a smaller team. It's sort of an expansion market, like I said. So I have the joy of selling both non-alcohol, beer, liquor, wine, and now CBD as well. So I've got a very full book.
Nice.
But of course, came out of the beer industry, so I have a special place in the heart for the beer division. So.
Well, and speaking of non-alcoholics, it is as we mentioned at the beginning of the show. If you're just now tuning in, this is being pre-recorded. We're recording this the morning of May 24th to be aired on Memorial Day. And since it's 12:30, we're all drinking non-alcoholic beers. We've got a long day ahead of ourselves. So cheers. Yeah. I think our video producer is having the hard stuff. So if our next video is a little blurry, get over it. So let's talk really quick about what everybody's drinking, because we all are consuming some Best Brands products. We're having the brewery's Well-Being, and they've got several different brands. Oh, wait, Candace is drinking a Heineken and but that's okay. It's still delicious. Don't be sorry, you're fine. So tell us a little bit about Well-Being and how that is for you all as a seller and where you can find it and all that kinds of good stuff.
Yeah, sure. Well, one of the things about Well-Being that I think sets it apart from some of the other non-alcoholic beers.
It tastes good?
Yes. It tastes fantastic, especially if you haven't been able to get into the non-alc beer thing before, try the Well-Being IPA. It's converted a lot of people.
It's really amazing. It honestly tastes like an IPA. Like, you wouldn't know that it's non-alcoholic unless someone told you.
Well, and one of the reasons that is because the brewers of Well-Being brew it before, like as an actual beer before removing the alcohol. And I don't know exactly the process that they go through. It's complicated and probably, patented and very secret. But my understanding is that they put, after the beer is fully brewed, so the yeast, all of that biotransformation that happens in the brewing process happens, and then they put it in like a vacuum scenario and raise the temperature. As you know, cooking beer totally ruins the flavor, but if you can get it to that temperature where the alcohol will evaporate out, but not actually cook the beer, you've got suddenly you have the flavor, the really important yeast flavor, and how the yeast interact with the hops in the brewing process, but non-alcohol. And I think that's one of the things that some of them miss.
I've just got to say that this is the first non-alcoholic beer that I've tried in a very, very long time. Many, many moons ago, I tried can I say the one that starts with an O that came in a green bottle?
O'Doul's.
Yeah, I tried that, and I was not a fan. Not only was it not a tasty product, but it did absolutely nothing. It brought nothing to the table for me. But on occasions such as today, I'm like, okay, I know they've got a great selection of them here at the Hub, and I want to check a few out. And so the guy at the bar recommended this right away, and I got to say, this is amazing.
And adding to that, drinking it out of a tulip glass in a bar takes it to another level too. It feels more like a real beer. I'm convinced if I gave someone that beer and didn't tell them it was non-alcoholic, they would not know.
Yeah, we've talked about it before that a lot of NA beers used to taste like punishment. And really, any beer is kind of a way almost to reward yourself without punishing yourself.
Well, and a good point too is, the reasons to not drink beer with alcohol in it are greater than ever. Mm-hmm. I mean, just to be frank, like I feel like 10 years ago it was, the only people that you saw drinking an NA beer were someone who quit drinking.
Yeah.
Right now you see, I want to feel good tomorrow. I'm going on a run later. I am, there's a lot more reasons that we're seeing people drinking non-alcoholics.
And with that, have you seen that there's a greater demand for it now that they have more of these products available?
Oh yeah, well-being has been a really big product for us, and it hasn't been slowing down. It started, I think, when we first started off, it was a big thing for January. It was a big push for dry January. Get that in, and then it became, industry people were like, dry January is really tough for bars, so I'm not going to do dry January. I'm going to do February, and then it just spread out. I think as the sort of bar culture, drinking culture, and beer culture, I guess, has changed a bit where it's a little more acceptable to have a beer earlier in the day. And so oftentimes people will meet over a beer earlier than they normally would. It's not just confined to happy hour, but with that comes some challenges. Not everyone wants to have that full beer at, in this instance, 12:45. So with the culture change and with that, I think maybe some more health conscious mentality in the industry. It's been really picking up. Yeah.
And I feel like the quality is only going to improve over time with the demand.
Yeah, I think well-being is amazing, and I think there are going to be a lot of people seeing it, and these other brands coming out with NAAF products as well. There will be a lot following.
NAAF, I love that.
So
I know that they're the two terms.
NA/AF, right?
Just to clarify, in Europe they don't call them non-alcoholics; they call them alcohol-frees, AFs, not what you're thinking right now. So.
I know. Just altogether, it was
NAAF. NAAF. I love that. Perfect. Well, let's move over here to Daniel here for a minute. Daniel, I've got a question for both of you, but we're going to start with Daniel. Tell us about your journey that led you to being the head brewer at Last Days of Autumn, and then we'll talk about what happened after that.
So in terms of actually learning how to homebrew and getting to that, I rode a bicycle from about 2006 to 2015, and I had a flat on the side of the road, and this guy came and asked me if I needed a ride home. I was like, sure. He was mutual friends with a couple other cyclists that I rode around with, and as we were talking in the car, he's like, oh yeah, I make my own homebrew beer. I was like, hey, that's really cool, man. I was like, maybe I'll ride my bike over one day and just go check it out. And it was like the most refreshing red ale, and I've probably never had a red ale since then, but it was a really good beer. So I was like, well, maybe I can actually save some money, because at that time in Sevier County and in Knox County, we didn't have what Best Brands brings us nowadays. We didn't have a lot of different breweries that came in. So if you wanted something, you had to make it yourself, and that's basically what I did.
Or drive a lot of hours to go get it.
Yeah, and I rode a bicycle, so I just couldn't go anywhere to go get it.
So your choices were buy what was available at the store down the street or make it.
Yep. But basically, when I started working at Barley's, I kind of had the mindset that it would be a good place for me to get my foot in the door into craft beer, and that's actually where I started. I started hanging out with the people from Highland Brewing Company in Asheville. I got to brew 2 beers on their small system, Coco Ono Chocolate Cherry Porter.
Ooh.
But yeah, just going through different festivals, volunteering my time, and then I met Aaron from Crafty before Crafty had opened, and that's when I started kind of getting a little bit serious about
doing it professionally.
Yeah.
And so, how did you land at Last Days of Autumn?
It was really just that didn't really have space for me at Crafty, so Mike found out that I was kind of on the look, and he had asked Aaron one day at Alliance, and he said, sure, yeah, definitely hire him. So I went over to the Last Days and was the head brewer. The first year was pretty hardcore, I won't lie, coming from a a homebrew background onto
Scaling up.
professional brewing.
Yeah.
And then I went to brew school actually 3 years after I was already a professional brewer. But yeah, I learned a lot in those past 5 years and experimented a whole lot too, like on my own time at home.
Yeah. Well, I've had a lot of many great beers at Last Taste, so I want to say thank you for all that. That's awesome.
Man. Blood, sweat, and tears,
Cheers.
man.
I'll drink. We're running out. We're getting empty. Pomade. Just kidding.
That's bad luck, right? That's bad luck right
Amy,
there.
please don't kill us.
She's taking care of the other guest.
Yeah, she's yeah. So that's kind of what got you a little bit into beer professionally. Peter, what drew you to craft beer personally, and then also what got you into beer professionally?
It's kind of the same thing probably. My first experience with like real craft beer was in college and late night writing papers in the dead of winter for musicology in Fargo, North Dakota. So I was a music student, and a friend of mine
in North Dakota.
In North Dakota, yeah. So I just remember late nights just sipping on like barley wines and giant stouts and stuff. I remember like specifically like Expedition Stout from Bell's, and this was like 10 years ago, like probably even more. And a friend of mine had brought those over, and I was like, some of those were the ones that just I thought, I want to experience this more, right? Yeah. And so he was the one who introduced me to craft beer. He was from Denver, which was a little bit further ahead than North Dakota in the whole like beer culture at the time. So anyway,
as I can imagine.
But then professionally, I spent 5 years as a traveling musician, a professional classical musician, and part of that was being on the road 10 out of 12 months of the year, going to different cities, because each job I had was about 3 weeks in some city in the United States. And when I was looking to get out of that for various reasons, I thought, what am I gonna do next? What do I want to do? I'm tired of this. I thought about my experience on the road, and I thought every time I would get to a new city, I would go, what local breweries are here? What's near the place I'm staying?
Very familiar with that.
What's the beer culture like? And I thought, this is what I spend all of my spare time doing. So let's look into this. Maybe there's a place for me here. And it just so happened that there was. So as I was having that decision, as I had sort of decided this is my last singing gig, I saw just like an advertisement on social media that a brewery from Georgia was looking for a sales rep.
That's right. I forgot you worked for Wild Heaven,
That's right, yeah. And so I had, aside from spending a lot of time in breweries and learning about beer and actually going through like the first level Cicerone program as well, I had no experience, right? It was just like, I wrote them a letter and I said, I know this seems far-fetched and you usually pick people out of the industry, but here's my story. I think I can sell your guys' beer and would love to be part of the team. And so I'm really thankful to Eric and Sarah and Nick and the leadership at Wild Heaven for taking this chance on me.
I'll drink to that.
I have so much respect for those guys, and that's what got me in to the industry, was just wanting to be around these people more, right? So, yeah.
I love that. And so then what got you from Wild Heaven to Best Brands? And then the next question, Daniel, is what got you from Last Days to Gypsy Circus? Go ahead, Peter.
As I said, I loved Wild Heaven. I loved the ownership and the management. It was a great company to work for. But personally, the brand rep position was a little taxing on me. Having a large territory and I guess repeatedly cold calling people, dropping in, saying, "Hey, try out this beer, try out this." It got to a point where I was struggling with it.
Yeah.
It just didn't fit my personality very well, and it got to a point where Best Brands was looking for someone. It was a nice, easy transition because Best Brands was the distributorship by which Wild Heaven was sold.
So you're still selling Wild Heaven.
Exactly. I knew the people very well. Was close with them. And so, the time came and I thought, I'm going to apply for this new position they have opening up. And it's different because now I have a set of relationships that I maintain more regularly around
it's like
town.
I see you every week.
Yes.
And like you've got, and it's sort of like a supporting role of like, what do you all need? How can I give you what you need to be a successful business and all that
Right.
kind of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. So Daniel, you were at Last Days for 5 years, which is crazy to think that Last Days has even been open for 5 years. Mike was on the show recently and said that someone was like, Last Days is one of the OG breweries. He's like, how is that possible? We've only been open for 5 years. You were there from day one and recently made the transition to Gypsy Circus. Tell us about that and what you're doing now at Gypsy.
So it really, I'll go ahead and say this, craft beer isn't what it used to be.
Craft beer what?
Isn't what it used to be. I'll
Okay.
throw that one out there for
Okay.
you. I don't like adding kids cereal to beer. You know what I mean? That type of thing.
Okay.
But mead has always been kind of a thing I've always been fascinated with. Made my first mead when I was with Crafty before they had opened. We actually poured it out in Market Square. I actually remember being in this place with Last Days and Crafty over here in the corner and bringing our homebrew kegs here and just giving people free samples all day long.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So lots of good memories in this place. But I've always kind of experimented with working with wild yeast and bacteria in the time that I've been at Last Days, and also making ciders on the side, making wine on the side, and making meads on the side. But I do like low alcohol meads, like a good 5%, 6% mead, something to actually drink a glass of, not like a 4-ounce pour, and it'll put you down.
Yeah.
You know. And in case anybody doesn't know, mead is basically honey and water and yeast and some nitrogen as well, because so back in the day when they made mead, same thing as this, the science wasn't as great with it. So mead people always thought it took months and years to from start to finish. Well, with how new brewing sciences go on, now we realize that there's no nitrogen in there and we need to add nitrogen. So in beer, it's called FAN. You have nitrogen from the grains. In wine, you have nitrogen from the grapes.
Gotcha.
Apples, cider, you have nitrogen from the skins, but honey barely has any nitrogen whatsoever. So you're able to actually kind of move it along a whole lot quicker. It still needs to age a bit, but you're able to actually get I have 500 gallons of our flower child that I made using all organic nitrogen, and basically it's just dead yeast cells that I give it in a powder form, and the yeast actually get the nitrogen from that.
Fascinating.
And, it's a nice and organic way of actually doing it.
It sounds like the short answer is this is a new challenge.
Yes.
And you like to be challenged, and so
Yeah.
you're excited about that.
So mead, barrel aging, clean and wild cider, and cider doesn't exactly like get sour and funk like a beer does. It actually goes through what's called a malolactic fermentation, and when that happens, the malic acid turns into lactic acid, and the lactic acid is much softer, and there's actually diacetyl, the butter kind of flavor to it, and it doesn't sour like it would a beer. Now mead can, but cider just does not. But sake as well. He's given me some sake ingredients to make and try.
Oh, that sounds
And
fun.
then the new thing actually that I'm doing now is 100% gluten-free beer.
Ooh,
Yes.
I love that.
So sorghum, millet, buckwheat, rice, and then basically just make it like any other beer, and make sure that there's no cross-contamination of it by
Yeah.
any means. But yeah, that's the new thing. I've got.
Gluten-free, not
Yeah.
gluten-reduced. Yeah.
And we're about to put out our first barrel age product that Matthew Lilly started, my predecessor, and it's an elderberry rye whiskey
Sign me up.
barrel aged
sounds incredible.
postmodern barrel.
Oh,
Tastes
yeah.
really, really good, but unfortunately he put all the elderberries into the barrel for me. There's like 10 pounds of elderberries, and they're very tiny, and it was a pain in the ass to get out of that barrel, and I was cussing him the whole time. Damn it, Lily. Damn it, Lily.
Thanks for
Love you,
thanks for
brother.
coming. No, so my question, so obviously with beer, even though the 4 ingredients, tons of variation, now that you have the mead and the ciders to play with, huge amount of variation. And when I first came in, when you first started working over there, and I always mess up this word, michelada.
Michelada.
Yeah,
So
micheladas.
I had a michelada cider that you had made, and oh my God, like it changed my mind as to what ciders could be. I didn't realize, ciders, it's a little bit sweeter. I've had some that are a little bit more dry, but it's a beautiful base. So what are some of the more experimental things that you're looking forward to doing with those?
So the whole, like I was telling you, the whole sour aspect, I have a couple things I'm working on to try to get it very sour. When I try to approach ciders and when I try to approach meads, I like to do more traditional things. I don't like to add a whole bunch of adjuncts to them. I like them honey, water, yeast, and maybe some fruit or maybe some spices, coffee, cocoa, whatever. But I try to make it for beer drinkers because cider is a very small, it's getting bigger, and mead's actually pretty small too. When I bartend at the Barrel House, a lot of people still don't know what mead is, basically.
Education, awareness.
Yeah,
that's
I
a
teach
tough
them,
a tough road to go down. Is education, but it's important. And when you're the first, that's kind of the thing you have to bear is breaking into the market, is sharing something new with people.
And as we all know, Knoxville beer community, like education is the number one thing. Like
Absolutely.
friendship, education, and camaraderie.
We work hard on that with Knox Brew Tours. We look forward to bringing people through Gypsy. Well, so you kind of mentioned something earlier I want to touch on with both of you. You said beer to you isn't what it used to be.
Yeah.
This is kind of a big question. The short version of the question is what's wrong with beer, but I'm going to take it in a slightly more positive angle and say I'm going to ask both of you what is, and Candace and Kevin and everybody at the table here, what is something that you feel like the craft beer could improve on? And that could be the liquid itself, that could be the environment, that could be how people serve it, how it's priced. The door is open for any way, shape, or form that you feel like the craft beer world could improve. And I just sprung that on you, so if you need a minute, take all the time you need except for hurry up.
I have a filler question if you need something a little bit easier while you're thinking on those things too, so if you need time. But
Go for it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, question for each one of you. One, how many John Wick / Keanu Reeves references do you
my
get?
God.
Because I have literally thought that this is the first time I met you at Beard and Beer Market.
Yeah, that's
lot?
right.
Yeah?
I know.
Sorry, I couldn't not.
Once every other week.
All right.
Seriously.
Okay.
Yeah,
Fair.
it's at least. Yep. So thank you for. putting
you're
it
very
out
welcome.
there.
I didn't
You're
even
very
put
welcome.
2 and 2 together when I was telling you about that sketch before the show. But anyways, go ahead.
All right, and then a question for you. So the Oracle Pale Ale, Oracle. So where did Oracle Delph? Where does that come from?
So that was my Appalachian Trail name.
It was your what name?
My Appalachian Trail name.
Oh, what?
Yeah,
so you
Oracle.
hiked the Appalachian Trail?
I hiked half of it.
Whoa, I did
I
not
ran
know
out
that.
of
That's
money
rad.
and then wanted to become a brewer. Like the moment I left, I was like, I've already been on this trail for 3 months. I was used to working 2 jobs all the time. And I was like, I don't have a college education. And the best thing I can do, other than working in a kitchen or a restaurant, was to basically start from the very, very bottom and learn how to make beer
That's so
professionally.
cool.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
All right, are we ready for the big question?
I think so. And,
Okay.
this is very tough, right? Because as someone who just who sells beer from a warehouse and everything and makes contact with accounts, who am I to tell any brewer how to do something differently or how to manage their business differently? So I want to make that disclaimer first. Like this
Okay.
is, but from a personal place, as someone who just enjoys beer, I think that there's a place for every style in existence, no matter how simple or how far out there. But to me, what really impresses me as a beer drinker is even those simplest styles done with care and just done to a impressive level, right? It can be any style, but I want to taste good fermentation sometimes. That's what's one of the more impressive things for me right now. I mean, like the hop selection and the malt selection, all that kind of stuff is hugely important, but I think people sometimes forget about how important whatever yeast you're using, how you cultivate it, how you manage it, and how to manage the fermentation, just the enormous impact that has upon the flavor of the beer. And when you taste something that's poured from the tap, that's fresh and just fermented beautifully and in the right place. It's like it can be any style. If I taste that, I want more, and I want to come back to that place. So I guess, like I said, I struggle to tell anyone to do anything differently, but I will always be impressed by a a well done Pilsner or a well lagered beer at a craft brewery
You wanted to
in
see
any
a
town.
little more of a rise back to some of the more traditional and classical styles.
Yes, but with the disclaimer that also, if you pour me a New England IPA where you spent an exorbitant amount on the hops and the cryo hops and did all of that kind of stuff,
You're down for that too.
I'm also down for that. But yes, we can't just go to the complicated and expect to just get people with the wild stuff. That, I think, is a path of diminishing returns at times. You also need to be improving upon the most basic things all the time, because it's not enough to just be a craft brewery anymore in the market. There was a day when if you just opened a place, and you could just get by the fact that you're independent, and that's tougher now.
And we need to continue to convert non-craft beer drinkers into craft beer as well.
Right.
And some of those more classic, traditional styles are great gateway beers to do that.
Yeah.
All right, what about you, Daniel? How can craft beer improve?
Stop trying to be cicerones. Put down the Untapped app. Drink your beverage, enjoy your company, and that's it.
I'll drink to that. I'll drink to that.
Well.
Yeah, we're out of beer.
Hey,
So-
don't drink to that. Hey, cheers. Cheers.
We're out of beer.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Team effort.
Ace,
Yes,
Kevin,
hello.
you guys have anything you want to add to the how can craft beer improve conversation?
I'll let you start. I need to think about this.
I think I'll do a quick answer.
Okay, go ahead.
For me, I would like to see. This is a tough one. I feel like I'm going to get in trouble for this, and I see this more often in other cities than in Knoxville. But overall, I would like to see customer service and craft breweries improve. Mm-hmm. They tend to get a bad rap for walking up to a bar and saying, "What do you want?" No, hello, how are you? Welcome to blah 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 brewing company. I'd like to see a little more customer service. I'd like to see our customer service in the craft beer community improve a little bit.
I agree with that because and I'm sure it's true with a lot of us. In fact, it's already been brought up on the show already. But you go to different places, you kind of want to check out what their beer culture is like, and you see the differences and the nuances of the customer service aspect. Which ones are warm and friendly and have that educational element. They want to size you up as to, well, what do you know and what can I offer to help expand that knowledge, which will overall give you a better visit in their location. So I totally agree with that. Had to jump in there on that. That was not my answer at all, though, because what I was going to say is just because you can do something and you see a trend moving in a certain direction doesn't mean that every brewery has to jump on that bandwagon and start making those damn seltzers. Stick to what you're good at. You're doing a great job. We don't need any more of those. That's my 2 cents worth.
They're coming. They're coming, though.
Y'all may not know, but every week Kevin does a segment on Brew News called That Damn Seltzer Report.
Wow.
So there's some history there if you've been listening to the show.
They're cheap, man.
Yeah, what about you, Ace? How can the craft beer world improve?
So if I could expand upon what you were talking about as well. I will, this will be my last week actually working at a bridge, but something that has been my favorite part about being a server there is being an introduction for people, not just to a bridge, but for some people to craft beer. Because we have people that come in and then here we have a great burger or love the location, and then aren't necessarily beer drinkers. And I take that as a personal challenge. But when people come in, it's, hello, welcome, have you been here before? If not, roll out the red carpet. What can I do for you? But on top of that, I always preface before I get there, it's not just, what are you drinking? It's, do you have any preference when it comes to beer style? Because that one question will gauge their educational background, if that's something that they're a little bit more experimental. So I feel like the way you can approach it, obviously being friendly, because there is kind of this pretentious nature to craft breweries. You walk in and there's an intimidating aspect. If you walk up and if you don't know what you want, then you feel bad if you want samples. But I feel like, yes, I think that people can be a little bit better with that. And I think coming full circle, what I would like to see is to have more NA beer options, NAAF options at our craft breweries, so that it is approachable for everyone. It's not just sodas, and I do love kombuchas and seltzers, whatever, but to have an NA option for people that aren't necessarily beer drinkers or alcohol drinkers, but maybe want to try beer, to have something like well-being and have variation, not just, well, this is O'Doul's, this is all we have. They're having a little bit of variation out there, and that's something that I have actually started looking for, going out of my way to look for when I'm at these breweries, is there something like this available so that everyone can enjoy it? Because craft beer is, I want it to be for everyone. Everyone is welcome.
Yeah, and that comes down to another thing I was going to say is cultivating your community, right?
Absolutely.
Because it doesn't stop at the tap, you know. It, as you said, what comes, how the customers are greeted, everything in between, everything when they walk in the door is hugely important. And so, cultivating with the biggest net you have is,
I love it, and I want to make it very clear. All of us at this table love craft beer and love the community.
Oh, yeah.
But and we keep it very positive and light. But it's fun to kind of to look at areas that we can push ourselves and push each other to make it even better than it already is. All right, we're running out of time. Before we go, I've got that super important question. It's been a tradition on the show, so we're going to keep this tradition rolling. To close this out here, Daniel and Peter, what is one moment, looking back, when you were a brewer during a global pandemic, when you were a beer sales rep during a global pandemic, what has been a positive experience that 20 years from now, when you look back on this time period, you'll remember?
You gave us all this time to think about it.
And if I may say as well, we've had people we've asked this question to where it's a personal thing. Like, this is, I got to spend time, like Charles Ellis said, I got to spend time with my son.
Charles, his answer was not professional at all. He said,
"Oh, it was."
I got to spend more. It wasn't.
It was very
professionally related. He said he'll look back on the time he got to spend with his family.
Yeah. Well. So, okay.
Alex Shirey said her answer was that she got to float on kayak more that summer than ever.
You spooked me with the preface of the question, so I had an answer prepared, and I thought I had to pivot. But no, so I've always been a bit of into nerd culture, video games, tabletop games, all that kind of thing. And during the pandemic, as we were all at home, some friends that I hadn't been in touch with, some since high school, we got together, and some of us, and I was introduced to sort of a community and some other people that I'd never even met before, and we started doing this in our spare time, right? We started playing games together because none of us were going out, and it's been about a year now, and some of these people I talk to almost on a daily basis and I'd never met, but just last night and the night before, now that as things are starting to change and open back up, I met some of them in person for the first time. They came to Knoxville, and I was able to see these people that I'd only seen on a Zoom screen for about a year, and we looked at each other in the eye, and we shared beers together, and it was so uplifting.
Magical.
It felt so good.
I love
So
that
seeing a friendship in real life that was started virtually during the pandemic is just a really cool story.
That is
that is cool.
Yeah.
You got anything for us, Daniel?
First off, I didn't get any free time during the pandemic. Just going to throw that one out there. Worked very hard, took care of last days when Mike, Tracy, and Stuart and Alex all got COVID, and Nathan at the same time, I believe. But I guess if there was one thing, it's I never lost my passion, I guess would be, because I've had a lot of things thrown at me in the craft beer industry, and I've never given up and never lost my passion, to be honest.
I saw you often during COVID canning beers at 6 a.m. in the morning. So thank you for your commitment. We appreciate that. All right, fellas, thank you so much for joining us on the show. We had a great time. We really appreciate you being here. And we'll see you, Daniel, hopefully around at Gypsy Circus in North Knoxville. And I guess, Peter, most people can't really find you unless they own a bar. But if anybody wants to hang out with Peter, he's usually here on Wednesdays at the Hub around lunchtime.
Yeah, that's a good bet. That's a good bet.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being on the show. And until next time, cheers, fellas.
Thanks for having us.
Well, cool.